This past Saturday, I had the honor to visit with a number of Korean War veterans at the 60th anniversary of the signing of the treaty at Panmunjom. A little statement. Of course, you know Korea is often characterized as the forgotten war, but in looking at the situation where we've got a very vigorous country of 50 million people in the South and a miserable despotism in the North, I can't think of too many wars that made as much difference as that war did. If you look at the stark difference between on the two sides of that narrow line, so it certainly should not be a forgotten war. A question that I'm sure you're going to have to deal with in the next several months: to what extent is the sequester going to affect readiness in Korea?
Well, Senator, I think it will affect readiness in Korea at some point. Presently, Korea and U.S. Forces Korea enjoys a very high priority in terms of funding and resources. So just after the forces deployed in harm's way, Korea is on that level. And because we have to be ready to fight in Korea tonight, it's that uncertain. So we've enjoyed that kind of funding. If confirmed, I intend to keep a very close watch on our readiness levels, the resources that we have. And I think my concern would be as we reduce our funding, particularly if we go into full sequestration, we know that we've seen a reduction in the forces now already, or their readiness. And that would be extended into the next year and, of course, become worse over time. And Korea will, or the forces in Korea depend on potentially the rotation of forces, but certainly the forces that would come forward if there is conflict on the peninsula. So I think that's the impact as we look to the future.
Well, I hope perhaps for the record you could provide some analysis, because it's now looking more and more like full sequester in 14 is a likelihood, if not a certainty. Some analysis of what the impact would be and how it would be allocated, because it's very important for us to know, as we're debating and discussing sequester and what the alternatives are, that we have a realistic picture of the impact. And my understanding from talking to other people in the Pentagon is that the sequester in 14 is going to be a much more serious, widespread impact than it was in 13, because of the lack of low-hanging fruit, if you will, of unexpended funds and those kinds of things. It's going to be a higher level of impact. And so perhaps for the record, you could give us some serious analysis of the impact on Korea. We need to have that information.
Senator, presently, we already see the impact on readiness just in this FY, as you mentioned, in FY13. You know that the Army has the majority of its brigades now at a lower training level, at focusing on company-level training, for instance, for those brigades who are either not deployed or those who are about to deploy. Those two categories maintain the training levels they need to be ready for that deployment, but all other brigades have come to a lower proficiency level and resourcing. The Air Force, you're aware, has already grounded 12 air squadrons, as I understand it. The Navy has cut back on ships going to sea and the maintenance that they're providing. So that's the short term. But as we take those cuts today, you will see a much deeper cut in readiness as we go into 14 and beyond, because that begins to compound itself. Pilots who haven't flown take much longer to get back up to combat proficiency. Brigades who haven't trained in the fundamentals, particularly the integration of combined arms at a higher level, take much longer to train, and it's more expensive. So I think as time goes on, we see our readiness coming down, and that's a concern. How does that impact U.S. Forces Korea? First of all, it's the forces that we may rotate there. They would take longer to be ready for the mission that they're going to do. If it were forces that had to be deployed in response to say a provocation, we would probably take some time here in the States to train that unit to the readiness level that we believe they need to be at to do the job before they deploy. So arriving forces might be delayed as a result.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And any additional information you could provide us for the record would be helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.